What's up, guys? Happy Friday. Not even going to give you much of an intro. Today on episode 6, I have a gentleman that I've talked about on episode 1, episode 2, episode 4 and 5, and here he is in episode 6. I'm very glad to have him. He's been a lot for my recovery. Felt honored he even wanted to talk to me. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony. Place has always been really cool for me. Like, you were really cool for me, man. Like, I remember, and this is just backstory because people don't know, I've talked about you, not just episode 1. You've been referenced in many episodes because you were a huge part of my early sobriety. Like, I remember being in treatment and going to all the little classes you got to go to, which I wasn't picking up much.
Right. Over at inpatient.
Yeah, okay. Inpatient. And then I remember there was like another, and I missed a class because I was just having a mood. It was like my 4th day out of detox. And I was pissed because I had to go to the houses. I didn't want to go to the houses because I was already like trying to not get in trouble.
Okay.
You know, use my mouth and just trying to be nice to everybody.
Right.
I don't know if it's this way all the time, but when I was in, I think like 70% were court appointed and didn't want to be there. And then there was a few people like I latched on to. Jackie was one of them, like a few other people, Paige. They were just all my friends. And we made friends really quick in there. But I remember there was another class that one of those people, I can't remember too, was like, yo, you got to go here. This guy's great. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And we walked in and man, you had like this wake the fuck up charisma. And I immediately got paid attention and you were saying stuff that I hadn't heard in any room. And it wasn't like there were coping skills,
right? But
they were also realistic in the way of, like, look, this is going to be hard. And, you know, and I just remember feeling so good after that. Like, and it changed my trajectory in rehab altogether. Like, I was really starting to pay attention. Like, I was telling the small group counselor, I can't remember his name to save the life of me. Great guy. But I was telling him, like, yeah, just this Tony guy over here. He goes, oh, yeah, no, he's great. I'm like, yeah, he was wonderful. And then after I left treatment and I was like, yeah, I'll do the IOP because I was serious. I was scared, you know? And I came here and I learned that you were the person. No, I remembered I learned that in rehab that you were over here. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to that guy. Like, and it was great, you know, every single morning, get up at 6, would, I can't remember, it was 8 or 9 I had to be over here. At that
9.
Time? 9? Yeah, okay, because I would go to
12.
The 7-ish NA every morning at 7, get out of there, go home, let my dog out, and rush over to IOP until I think it was like noon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like my life for, I think it was 60 days.
Yeah, because it's 2 months. Yeah.
Yeah?
8 weeks, yeah.
I learned so much.
That's awesome.
And I appreciate everything you did for that. I think if I hadn't had you for that IOP, I don't think I would have been as confident to kind of run out about life. You know, I don't think that coping skills would have been as strong That makes sense. So I appreciate you very much.
I
my
appreciate
friend.
it too.
What got you into this?
In all honesty, at the time, I was 3 years sober. I was active in NA at the time, and I was working at Wendy's, and I'd been there for about a year and a half. And at that time, that was the longest I had ever had a job anywhere in my entire life. I was the king of the 6-month jobs. And I had perfected to an art form, knowing exactly when to stop showing up.
Mm-hmm.
About the day before they were probably going to fire me. I had it down to a science.
That is an art form.
Really good at it. So I didn't get fired a whole lot. I just stopped showing up most of the time, and it was usually around the 6-month mark. But I'd managed to, and Wendy's it wasn't my first job in sobriety, but it was the first job of any significance and where I stayed. And so being there for a year and a half was a really big deal. And at that time, there was a girl who was a member of my home group, Phoenix Group, in NA at that time. That was my home group. And she was in my home group, and she worked in admissions at the treatment center. And her boss had just quit and gone to work somewhere else. And so they promoted her to the director of admissions. So her assistant position was open. And I was the PI policy I don't even remember what it was called, but I was the representative for our home group that worked with the NA call center. It wasn't really even a call center. We had, for the area, we had like a phone, but it wasn't, there were no mobile phones back then.
Right.
93. It was a phone line. And I can't remember the name of the committee. It wasn't H&I. I think it was PI, Public Information, but I can't remember for sure. But whatever group it was, the subcommittee was responsible for maintaining the phone line. I was on that. And so I'd been doing that for almost a year. And so I was used to getting, people, and most of the time it was people calling in, wanting to know where a meeting was. But once in a blue moon, somebody'd call in crisis and freaking out, and I don't know what to do, and blah, 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 blah. And so I'd been doing that for about a year through NA. And so Casey, the girl who was in my home group, was like, oh, you should come out to the treatment center. You'd be perfect for the job in admissions because you're already doing that for the NA helpline. And my immediate thought was, oh, shit, I could get paid for the service work I've been doing for free. Absolutely. Sign me up for that. So,
goddamn Lily.
I would love to have this great altruistic story about how I just really wanted to help people in my heart. But that was absolutely not at all. I wanted to make some money off of being sober.
Yeah.
And so I went and applied and went in for my first interview. And I ended up actually having to interview with a lady from our corporate office at that time. And we were a much smaller company back then. We only had like 7 facilities total. And so somebody coming from corporate wasn't nearly as big a deal as it is now for something like that. Because everybody knew everybody in the company, but I didn't know that time. I was working at damn Wendy's.
Right.
So it was a big deal for me. Ooh, corporate. And they really liked me during the interview, but they did not pick me for the job. They actually picked somebody who had a college degree. I didn't. I had a high school diploma, and so I didn't get the job. Got a letter in the mail thanking me for my interest, and we'll keep your application on file, but we've decided to go somewhere else. And I was like, damn.
That's got to be double frustrating because you're already doing the service work.
Right. It was horrible. Yeah, it made me. Plus, I'd gotten it in my mind that it was time to get out of Wendy's and move on.
Right.
So that was upsetting. So then I just started putting in applications at other restaurants because I was like, okay, I got to get out of Wendy's. I can't stay at Wendy's. And it was always the plan in my head that I was going to eventually go back to school because I'd originally, when I graduated high school, I'd gone to college as a computer science major. And I graduated in 87. And we were programming BASIC. We had 3.5-inch floppies that had 1K.
Oh yeah.
And that was like so much space you would never be able to use it in a whole lifetime. So our entire year's worth of programs were kept on this 1K floppy disk. There were no operating systems. That wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Microsoft, I don't even think they may have already started, but they weren't doing anything yet. There wasn't even MS-DOS. I mean, none of that existed. It was just you turned the computer on and you put a floppy disk in and you programmed it. And so that was how and I was good at it. I loved doing it. And so that was always my plan, was to go back to college, finish my degree in computer science, and then get a job programming somewhere. And so then when the treatment center job fell through, it's like, okay, well, get another restaurant job, because you've got to start saving money and get back to school. And then about 3 months later, I get a phone call from the lady at corporate asking if I'd gotten a letter saying that they had gone with somebody else. And I said, well, yeah, that was like 3 months ago. Like, oh, okay. Well, I was hoping maybe they didn't send it. We really liked you. And so we've spent the last few months creating a position for you.
Nice.
So I was the first ward clerk. That was not a position before they hired me, which was really frustrating because it meant there was no job description. They didn't know what they wanted the ward clerk to do. The first 3 days I was there, they literally sat me in an office with all the employee manuals and said, "Here, read these," while they were trying to figure out what to do. But I only did that for about 6 months before the lady that they hired, who had the college degree, they fired her because she had a college degree, but she was terrible with patients. And so they fired her and then moved me into admissions. And that was all she wrote. Yeah. And I did that for about 3 years. And only did the assistant job for probably about 6 months before the girl who was in my home group that talked me into applying for that job, who was the director of admissions, she quit to go to law school. And so then they bumped me up to the admissions director position. So within my first year there, I had a department head position. And so now I was in the management team, and I was having to go to management team meetings and do monthly reports. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was at Wendy's asking if you want a biggie size your fries. What in the hell? It was insane. But yeah, I did that for about 3 years. And then I got really depressed and frustrated. And I mean, literally diagnosed with chronic major depression that I had no idea that I'd had my whole life, and was a big factor in my alcoholism. And it was getting to a head with the job because it was constant. Everybody you talk to when you work in admissions is in crisis.
Right.
There are no good days. Everybody is having the absolute worst day of their life. And then and back then it was not a speedy process like it is now for folks. We would be working with people on the phone 3 or 4 days to get all of the stuff arranged for an admission, and having to get their insurance verified, and get approvals. And, I mean, it was an investment with people, and not even just with the patients, but a lot of times you'd be dealing with and talking to their family members over the course of that. So you build a relationship with these folks, and then you'd spend 3 or 4 days getting them in, and they'd come in and they'd do all the paperwork. And then the TAs would come and take them out of my office and go to the back, and they just disappeared for 28 days back into the back of the building. And I had no idea what happened back there. I didn't know what happened to them. I'd never see them again until 28 days later when they're coming up the hall to discharge. And it's a completely different person. And most of the time I wouldn't even recognize them. And, I had this big investment and commitment, and and knew who and most of the time they had no idea who I was. They didn't remember who the hell they talked to during the admissions process. Back there for 28 days having their life blown away. And so I was like, I want to see what happens next. I want to know what's going on back there. So that's when I moved back to clinical.
That's crazy. 3 days?
Yeah. Usually 3 or 4 days. Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah. I mean, now it's like maybe an hour they're talking. They just talk to people on the phone for like 10, 15 minutes. Come on in.
I called at around, actually I know exactly. It was 10:15 a.m. that I called. And that was right after I had to call my parents, let them know, like they had no idea what was going on, or that I was a drinker, not much less an alcoholic. I called and they were like, yeah, come in today at 5 p.m. Yeah. We'll have a bed for you then.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool. no backing out now.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I didn't, but I can't imagine the time and the mental hurdles you'd have to go through of 3 days before.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people, what was like the percentage of people that would change their mind?
Honestly, it wasn't that high.
Good.
I mean, because the reality is anybody who was in, extreme crisis, obviously, if they were going to go into withdrawal or anything like that, it would be the same day.
Yeah.
But those really, shockingly, were not as common as people planning out. I mean, people would have to, get time off of work and make arrangements to have their, dogs taken care of, and it's just all kinds of stuff that was involved in it that was much more intricate back then, and it was a much bigger hassle dealing with insurance companies back then.
Right.
Because this was way before there was any of the Parity Act stuff. Mental health was, and not even just mental health, but substance abuse was treated completely different from every other medical condition. You get, when we talk about doing things like pre-certification now or pre-authorizations now, that's stuff that can be done the day of admission or even a day or two after somebody's been admitted. Back then, absolutely not. If you had not called and gotten the approval from the insurance company before the patient ever walked in the door, we were not going to get paid for a dime. And we had to, and that was the more frustrating piece, was how many times we would get right to the edge of being able to admit somebody and call the insurance company, and they would deny it for no reason. They would meet all criteria, but that we don't follow ASAM criteria, or we don't recognize the DSM diagnostic criteria. They got away with it because they treated substance abuse as completely different.
Yeah, it wasn't really a disease then.
Well, it was, but they didn't have to treat it the same way.
Okay, so it was still, to them, it was still considered one, but
not one we're going to cover.
Yeah.
Annoying, is it?
So when you got the clinical,
Mm-hmm.
like I know most people, I've had one other person, like I had Kelly, and she's gonna laugh in her episode because I still don't know how to say her maiden name, Merlilin. Like during the intro, it was like Merlilin.
Dang it!
Aha! I did it.
I could say it if you hadn't messed it up first. Renan.
Yeah, Marin. Okay, I still fucked it up then.
Yeah.
So an L silent, basically.
I think there might be one silent. I'm not sure because I can't spell it. I have to look it up.
Sorry, Kelly. But she was talking about how she started out as like a tech. Was that your path?
Well, the ward clerk was the first one.
Okay.
But yeah, once I got back to clinical, my first job in clinical when I left admissions, was I was the evening and weekend counselor.
Oh, okay.
So I was basically like what they've got over there now, the milieu counselors. That was basically what I was doing back then. So I just basically oversaw the evening schedule because there really wasn't much back then that we had the AA and NA meetings that would come in different nights of the week. And so we had to make sure that the patients would get to those. And then I had a book study that I ran in the evenings. And then on the weekends, I was basically there just to kind of oversee making sure everybody was getting to group and doing the stuff that they were supposed to be doing. And then that was pretty much it. And then with that, I got to sit in as the co-counselor for the counselor that was on duty at that time, who ran our aftercare group. Because back then, inpatient had its own separate aftercare group once a week that folks would come back to and attend that. And so I got to sit in on that group with him for almost a full year as his co-counselor. And so he was basically mentoring me and training me and running group and all of that. And that was a great group to kind of learn how groups operate and how to run a group and all of that, because these were people that had already completed treatment and were coming back. And they were out in the community and going to meetings and had sponsors and working steps. So their recovery was getting solidified, but they were doing the deal. And because it was not anything that was, mandated or a requirement, it was, just the people who wanted to come back and It wasn't billed for. So, I mean, there was really absolutely no obligation for them to come back.
So
And so the
important.
ones that did were super motivated and taking it serious. So that was a great group to kind of get your feet wet in how to be a counselor and how to run a group, because it basically ran itself. So they taught
So
me, and
cool.
he taught me how to run a group, and that was where it started.
Aftercare is so important.
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
mean, rehab was important.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like rehab is where you dry out and you learn coping skills to help you along the process of drying out, along with some future coping skills in the hows and the whys of serotonin, dopamine levels to get back to, like, I was being really fucking nerdy about it
Right.
in rehab.
Right.
But I was lucky where like at least like the counselors and who's the people that run small group? I forgot. What are their names? They're the actual.
Yeah. They're counselors.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then aftercare is like really where
Yep.
everything that I learned there, and I was, had 30 days that I was so proud of.
The way I like to describe it is inpatient is education, and then outpatient or aftercare is implementation.
Yeah.
So now I'll put it into practice.
It's a great way. What was your sober date or clean date?
October 30th, 1990. What?
Every time I hear 13 years, and I'm like, man, that's awesome. You're probably going to have most that I've seen on here. And then I thought, I was like, I don't know. It had to be at least, I know it's over 10. 1990?
Yeah. 1990.
24? No, that's not.
30.
34 years?
34, yeah. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. It was a very different time when I got sober.
That is awesome, though.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I'm going to ask you all the questions I ask people because this is, boom, this is awesome. I knew it was a long time. Like, I thought it was going to be like 18, 19,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Oh,
My brain
man.
can't even wrap around the idea that it's 30 plus. I mean, I have to literally stop and count on my face. Like, how long is it? Is it really that long? There's no way.
Yeah. I mean, on here, I don't like to, like, I do, like, some people have told, like, their full story, and it's great. And I'm always glad when people share. Honestly, if it's okay with you, I kind of want to stick to the part of having sober time.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
know?
that's the more interesting part.
It
honestly.
is.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've all, like, and I want to do this mainly is because, like, I have a friend that had 11 years,
Okay.
then fell off and OD'd.
Oh, no.
And he had 2 kids. Like, and this is somebody that told me I needed to go to rehab.
Right.
So it's like, what kind of kicked this in a year ago was him passing away. And I was like, I got to do something because there's really, like, he was writing like letters. He had been telling me, he was just like, I am so glad that I'm clean. But at the same time, I don't know how to fucking do this anymore. Once you've navigated and life changes. So the coping skills change.
Yep.
And, like a lot of us, like you, like I, like depression was a big, weight
Yep.
for him.
Yeah.
And he also PTSD from military, from childhood things. So he was just like, the last time I talked to him, he said we were playing actually video games together. He used to play with me on Thursday nights when I stream, like
Okay.
every Thursday.
Uh-huh.
And just like, I don't know how to navigate this anymore. I'm not sure I want to, but don't worry, I'll be okay. And then Monday they found it. Like, so this is kind of like, that was like really, and I haven't even talked about this yet on this show. That was kind of the thing that made me really want to do this.
That kicked it off. Yeah.
Yeah, because it made me realize at that time, like I was 6 years at the time, like, which is relative when you think about it. It's a good amount of time. I'm proud, but at the same time, I haven't hit a lot of the sobriety hurdles that I'm gonna hit. Now, am I strong right now? Fuck yeah. Where am I gonna be in a year?
Right.
Like, first question: at what point in your 33, almost 34? When is you said what was your date again?
October 30th.
Yeah, you're coming up on
Probably.
34. Do you celebrate it anymore?
Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't even let people know, like in the aftercare or anything like that.
sometimes,
Yeah.
but I try not to, just because I don't want it to be the focus, because I'm not here for me. I'm here for the patients. So so I don't usually bring it up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't avoid it. So if somebody asks, especially if it falls on a day that like group is going on, somebody says something, then I won't deny it, but I try not to make a big deal or even give them any hints.
Yeah.
To even ask those questions.
I remember you're that way about your birthday too.
Yes.
And I remembered I found out your birthday. I put it in my calendar, and every fucking year I send Kelly a message to tell you happy birthday.
And she does every year.
Yeah. I'm like, I know you didn't like it, so I'm gonna keep on doing it. Just to remind you, like, hey, dude, I'm still here.
Right.
I'm good.
And I love that every year.
Well, you're so at what point and how many years did you hit a point to where you realize, like, oh shit, I haven't thought about, well, it might be different because you've worked in the system the whole time.
But it's not even that. Even if I didn't, I know that people say all the time in meetings that you get to a point where you are freed from the obsession of drinking and using.
Yeah.
I do not believe that happens.
Right.
I'm 33 years. I still am not. It's not gone. It's still here.
Yeah.
And it's not because I work in the field and I'm working with people who are in early recovery all the time. My personal life, there's new shit that comes out regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And every single solitary time, and I don't mean just new drugs. I mean, even just my new obsession that I like to talk about, buzzballs. I am obsessed with buzzballs.
Fucker buzzballs.
I don't know! They came out since I've been sober. I just know that they're these little plastic things that are the size of a tennis ball, and they're round, and they come in different colors, and they have little pops, and it's some kind of alcoholic beverage, but I don't know what the hell it is.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And my addiction is still alive and kicking, because whenever I see a tub of them sitting in the center aisle at some grocery store or wherever the hell they sell them, ooh, what's that like? I mean, I know what the fuck they're like. I know they're going to end up at 3:00 in the morning with me passed out in a public space.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing about that that's even remotely interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have that disease. I still have that part of my brain that's still, ooh, what's that like? And so every time I see something new, or I'm watching the news and there's some new drug out, or there's, something that's, all the rage now, and all the legal, crazy convenience store drugs that are out now.
Yeah.
I mean, my brain still, after 30 plus years, I wonder if that's okay for me to use. And I know that it's not. I mean, and that's the thing, is when those thoughts flash through my brain, they last for about 1/10 of a second until the recovery side of my brain kicks in and says, you know what the fuck that's like. You know where that's going to... I mean, it doesn't last. I'm not foaming at the mouth and dropping on the floor and, losing my mind, obsessing over these things. So from that perspective, yes, the overwhelming obsession is gone, but the thoughts are still there.
Yeah.
My brain's still... And that's just for the drugs. My addiction still exists in 100 other ways than drugs and alcohol. So that's what I mean when I say I don't believe that the obsession ever leaves us. There was, when I first moved to clinical at the treatment center, when I left admissions, we had a clinical director at that time, a woman by the name of Iris McDonald, who was my absolute favorite person in the world. I learned so much from her. She just kind of took me under her wing, and because she was the clinical director, she just kind of supervised everything that I was doing, and really laid the foundation for everything that I knew about counseling and how to work with people and all of that stuff. And she used to say all the time to the patients, you will have this disease until 3 days after you're dead.
Damn.
And inevitably somebody would say, why 3 days? Yeah, because it's going to stick around for a couple more days just to make sure your ass doesn't get bit.
Yeah. Ah,
And I believe that. I think she was absolutely 100% right. I don't think I will ever be free of this. I will always have it. I will always have those stray thoughts. And I don't get upset with myself. I don't judge myself. I'm not angry with myself. I don't beat myself up, because that's what it means to have the disease of addiction.
yeah.
What my recovery is not getting to the point where I don't have those thoughts. My recovery is every time I have those thoughts, I don't have to act on them.
Right.
I have a choice today, and I did not have a choice when I was drinking. If I had that thought, I would know what a buzzball was like, because I would have already been through every flavor that they have.
Right.
That was not a decision. It was an action. Today, I have the ability to decide what I'm going to do or not. And I can change my mind. I can say to hell with all of this recovery shit, and I can go buy a buzzball and see what it's like. I choose not to. And that's my recovery, is that I have that choice today. Once I pick up, I don't have that choice anymore.
Right. Yeah. I think fucking buzzballs.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious,
Right?
bruh. No, mine was
They're so pretty. They have such nice colors.
my whole early and late. You know how you have to go to comedy clubs all the time, still
Uh-huh.
around alcohol. I've
Uh-huh.
actually never been isolated away from all of it, because it's everywhere,
Mhm.
just like everybody else.
Right.
But being in bars and clubs all the time, up until like a year ago when I pretty much just dropped it all.
Right.
Mine was because I always loved club sodas and lime. That would
Uh-huh.
be my go-to
Uh-huh.
in those places. Then they came out with LaCroix and the bubblies, and then they came out with the alcoholic ones.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, fuck, why couldn't they waited done this 5 years before, just so I knew what one tasted like.
Right.
But then like my wife every now and then will have a beer. Every
Uh-huh.
now and then will have a glass of wine. I've never seen her drunk. She says I never will, because she was like, you will never love me again. She was like, they're not good, Billy. They don't taste like bubblies. They don't taste like LaCroix. They're just fucking horrible.
Right.
Um,
And that's what I mean when I say I know what they are. We had wine coolers when I was still drinking.
Cisco and
It's the same
T-Bird.
thing, and they
Yeah.
were gross and disgusting back then.
Yeah, fucking Boone's Farm.
Yes.
Strawberry daiquiri.
Yes.
Oh man, I saw those in the store the other day too. I
They
was
still make Boone's.
like, yeah, they still make them.
Wow.
Yeah, they still do. And every time I think of that one single wide trailer I was in,
Uh-huh.
this dude,
Yes, you have to have a trailer. to-
he was like a single, the silver round trailers. It was like
Uh-huh.
one room.
Yep.
Like the couch was the bed.
Right. There's
And it had an extension cord coming from a power line to power the whole trailer.
yes.
And this dude in there, man, I tell you what about these goddamn booze form right here, boy. Right here. Here's some Cisco, some T-Bird mixed together. I was so ghetto. When I started
Absolutely.
drinking, if I'd have known, it's a disease, yeah, but I wonder if that turpentine that I was drinking from
Right,
those
added
gas
to
station booze didn't add to it.
Yeah.
No, you're right though. It's more, and I think that's good. You still, even after 33 years, having to do the maintenance makes me feel better.
Good. Because I think it should. Because I think we get the wrong message a lot of times, especially. And I know, and I honestly believe that old timers in meetings that say stuff like, getting to the point where the obsession is lifted and blah 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 blah. I do think they mean well
Yeah.
when they say stuff like that, but I end up getting the wrong message from it. What I hear is, "Oh shit, I'm still thinking about it, so I'm doing this wrong."
Yeah.
And I start beating myself up, and I've got to do it better. I've got to do it perfect. And it's the same thing it's the same problem that I ran into with any kind of religion growing up.
Oh yeah.
I'm not having these, burning bush moments because I'm not doing it right. It's not happening because I'm doing something wrong. And that was what my early recovery for the first couple of years, that's what it all looked like, was I'm doing this wrong because I'm still having these thoughts. I'm still having this stuff. And it's like, no, that's what the disease of addiction is. Of course you're going to have those thoughts. You're not acting on it. That means you're doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the complacency is something I've always kind of worried about. I remember during IOP, that word was kind of engraved into my head.
Right.
And I'm glad it was, because there's been moments over the past 7 years where it's I've realized, when my daughter was born, COVID, becoming I learned how to be a parent during COVID because my daughter was just born, just moved in with 2 other step kids and trying to learn and navigate life. And I realized once everybody could start going about again 2 years later, I hadn't thought once about my sobriety. Like, not once. And then Robin's like, hey, let's go out. And we went to a dinner. Still having to wear a mask, of course. We sat down. She was like, man, I'm going to order a drink. I was like, yeah. Oh, fuck, I'm sober. I haven't thought about it.
Right.
In 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Like, I need to go to a meeting, dude.
Right, yeah.
And we did. We left there. We went home. The next morning, I went up and I found, like, there wasn't, like, it had been so long that my meeting wasn't available anymore. Like, my home group.
Which one was that?
It was a 7-ish.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are they back? I think they're back.
I don't know. Are they?
If they're back. I think they're back.
I'm going to go over there one morning.
I think they might be.
Yeah. I've always, just because of my job and everything, I've always had to go to an NA meeting because it's like through the day.
Right.
You know? So I go and, I mean, I don't go a lot. I go to pick up. Right. I went to our friend Michelle's 1 year the other day to watch her pick up and be there for her.
AK?
Yeah.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, gotta go, man. I'm
right.
so glad I saw that online because I had a couple things to do. I'm like, no, fuck that. I gotta go there for Michelle, yeah.
That's awesome.
And then like I've been a couple more, like a friend was like, hey man, there's this new meeting in Ogden.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, cool, let's go check it out. And I'll go and I've been like, it's not there yet. And I won't go back. You know?
Yeah.
And that was another thing I wanted to ask is I remember it always being told to me. And I think during the first year, 2 years, really until you kind of realized it's happened. I mean, 90 for 90 is a must. Got to do it. Like if you're taking it seriously, you're going to do 90 for 90. After that, you're going to do a home group. If you're still, you should find a good sponsor that mixes with your personality and do everything you can, put your heart into doing the steps. Now, did I do that? Fuck no. No.
Right.
Never worked a step. I've read about them.
Uh-huh.
I did go and like read a lot.
And shockingly, you're still clean and sober and sitting here.
Exact. So I think
How
it's like
dare you?
everybody is so different.
Yes.
There's
a reason that chapter in the AA Big Book starts with, here are the suggested steps we took.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what really got me off from it was like I went to a meeting here in town, and it was like some guy was like, I could tell he was like really just looking for as many sponsees as he could find. And he was like, somebody, why don't you come over here? I'm like, let's go fishing or something, talk about getting started on the steps. I'm like, oh, I'm not ready to start those yet. Well, you ain't going to make it if you don't. I'm like, right there. I'm like, all right, man, we have a good day. And I left and I never went back to that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I call a Pokemon sponsor.
Pokemon sponsor.
Got to collect them all.
God, man. And then like I went back. I did end up going back to pick up a chip. I think it was like my 3 year. And I saw him and he was back on like 60 days.
Uh-huh.
And I was just like, and that's where I realized that everybody is completely different.
Right.
Things I've learned over, multiple years is if the meetings are working for you, don't fucking stop. If your sponsor is working for you, respect them, do the steps that they're asking you to do. If not going to meetings is working for you, I mean, it's your life. Do it. I even have friends that were on harder stuff for years and years and years and years and years. Haven't done that to 5 to 6 years, but every now and then we'll still have a beer or smoke pot. And is it the best way to do it? No. Do I recommend it? No. But they're not on that other part, and their life has progressed to where they're being a part of society. Now, I'm not talking about their future.
Right.
Talking about
what
they did to get to there. I can't knock anybody's techniques, and I won't. Like I can't knock anybody's techniques. I think you got to do what works for you. Like for me, being a dad is everything. Everything. My daughter has this disease in her. I know she does because it comes from both sides of the family. Both sides of my family have addicts and alcoholics.
How old is she?
4.
Oh, yeah. That's old enough. You could see it.
Yeah. Oh, she's so obsessive.
Yeah.
She's obsessive about OCD about coloring. If it's outside lines, it's trash. She's screaming. If she doesn't hear the exact, like, everything, she's obsessive about it. She collects, has to have now. Now, normally that's normal 4 or 5.
Right. Absolutely.
I can see it. So it's kind of like,
we can spot our own.
We can spot our own.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't mean that she's destined to, she's going to be an addict and God, she's doomed. But absolutely spot, you can get that feeling in your gut, like, that she might be one of us.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is just as much as she inherited your genetics and whatever genetics from your wife's side, she's also inheriting and being impacted and being influenced by your recovery.
Right. And she doesn't know what the fuck it is.
Right. And she doesn't have to. But she can grow up knowing what healthy behaviors and healthy choices are, what that looks like and how that works and how to communicate like a normal person and not keep shit hidden and try to figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
All the stuff that we did wrong before we get clean and sober, she doesn't have to do any of it.
She doesn't. No, that's a great way to put it too. Yeah. I couldn't have worded that better myself. Like she knows I have a sober birthday, and she tells all of her teachers, anybody she sees, today's my daddy's sober birthday. That's awesome. And I mean, it was really cool this year. Like her teachers texted me. Like one of them's got a bunch of years too, and she was like, "Hey, yo, congrats!" I'm like, "Oh, that's really cool. Thank you for my daughter's big fucking mouth."
And that stuff honestly has a huge impact. One of the things that I remember in my early recovery, before I even started working at the treatment center, there was a woman, and this was when I was still going to NA. I hadn't made the switch to AA at the time. But there was a woman who was a member of Together We Rise, and she would come to that meeting and several others on a regular basis. She was probably in her early 30s, single mother, kid that she had, her son, I think he was 12 or 13 at the time, living paycheck to paycheck, could not afford childcare. So she had to bring him to every meeting that she went to. And he would sit in the corner and do his homework or color or, whatever. And we would have our meetings, and he was just there in the background the whole time. And after about 2 or 3 years, maybe not even that long, it may have only been about 2 years, we're sitting in a meeting, and he had moved from sitting in the corner coloring and doing homework to closer to the circle to sitting in a chair and paying attention. And by that point, he was like 15. And we're all just sitting in the meeting, and nobody was really paying much attention to any of that. We were used to him being there. He was a part of the group, and she was super active. The meeting gets done this one particular night, and they're giving out chips, and he stood up and picked up a white chip.
Wow.
Every dude in that meeting was spitting fire. We were so pissed off. And after the meeting was over, we circled him in the parking lot. What the hell is wrong with you? Why would you not have called any of us before you ever picked up? What the fuck? You've been coming here for 2 years. You know better than this shit. Doesn't matter. This is your mother's program. You know all about blah, blah, blah. I mean, everybody was furious. And he's just sitting there, 15-year-old kid. I didn't get high. Then why the fuck did you pick up a white chip? Because I've been coming here for the last 2 years, and I think I might be one of y'all.
Whoa.
Dude never used, as far as I know, and I lost track of them. She ended up getting a job and moving out of town. So I have no idea what ended up happening with the story. But at the time, he'd been coming to meetings and was actually sharing in meetings. He didn't try to sponsor people or anything stupid like that. But he did actually ask someone to sponsor him and walk him through the steps. And he'd gotten through to his 4th and 5th step, I think, by the time they moved out of town. And was still, as far as I know, there were a couple people that kept in touch with her for about a year or so after she left. And as far as we know, he never ever ended up picking up. I don't know that he continued going to meetings. I can imagine if you don't have a history of using, at some point that's going to get weird and awkward going to meetings, trying to share and explain to people, why that's something that you're doing. But it absolutely had a huge impact on him.
Yeah.
Growing up in the program and around it, and decided he wasn't going to go down that same path, but
proactive as hell.
Could see the patterns himself. Absolutely. And there's lots of people that have been, especially now. I mean, we're so far past when Bill and Dr. Bob started all this shit. There are generations of people who have grown up in and around recovery, and have not gone down the same paths. That those of us that ended up having this ended up going down. So she can absolutely have the traits and have the characteristics and have the genetics, but it doesn't mean that she has to follow that same path. Being raised around recovery and by people embracing recovery is going to absolutely have as much of an impact on her as her genetics.
Yeah. And I try to do little things for her now. Like if I see addictive traits, I try to explain in the best way I can to a 4-year-old on why that emergency feeling of have to have is just something that goes away.
Yeah.
For a moment.
Yeah.
But you have to making yourself feel like you deserve more than want, and you have to question on what this is going to do for you, good and bad. Like we do a lot of drawing on the walls. Like what would happen if you hadn't have drawn on the wall? Well, I wouldn't be in trouble right now. Exactly. Now, what do you think is going to happen now you did draw on the wall? It's like, well, I think I should probably get some candy and think about this. I'm like, well, you're fucking wrong. Like, if a person, she's got my humor for sure. Like, oh man, do you have a characteristic of when you were drinking and using that still pops up its head and remains a part of you, that when you feel that happening, you're like, oh, there he is. There he is.
Absolutely.
And then how do you get it back? What is the characteristic and how do you usually dial it back?
The characteristic is, it's not a tendency as much as it's a overwhelming, well, not overwhelming because I can control it, a desire to embellish, which when left unchecked turns into complete and total pathological lying.
Right.
But its origin, its root is wanting to embellish. So any story, any memory, anything, I want to enhance it.
Right.
And I do believe that is a core characteristic of my addiction, because in my mind, it is just another version of more is better, which is what everything in my addiction has always been about and centered on. Doesn't matter what it is, more will always be better.
Yeah.
And that's just a different manifestation of that. And so even getting clean and sober, that's still there and it will still pop up. And it gets activated with most things that are connected to my addiction. So whenever I'm in a situation or a setting where I feel uncomfortable, but it's not like physical discomfort, it's uncertain. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what to expect. I don't know who might be there or what's going to happen. That kind of level of uncertainty that kicks in any self-esteem stuff. Like, oh, I might be rejected, or I'm going to be, looked down on or judged or blah, 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 blah. That's where it kicks off, because that's I think one of, or if not the core issue of my addiction, that's what it has fed for pretty much my whole life, and absolutely throughout my whole addiction. Was trying to cover up that. And that's still there. I don't know that I think that's the piece that's probably never going to completely go away.
Right.
And so whenever that gets nudged or kicked or poked at a little bit, that's where that tendency will come up. And it's much better now. I mean, that's the bonus of 30 plus years, is I can spot it And usually I can know before I even enter a situation that, okay, I'm probably going to be uncomfortable in this setting. I'm going to be a little funky. And so I got to be on the lookout for wanting to embellish or over exaggerate things. And so it's a lot easier to spot ahead of time now, which means I can cut it off at the path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like too, you also, before going into a situation, I do this all the time. It's almost like, you know how, like I was telling you, my wife goes backpacking and packs to the ounce to the thing. When I go into a social situation, I
mentally,
pack of all things, everything.
Mentally.
I isolate all the unsettling feelings, and I make sure that I have the medicine for those unsettling feelings of what to do.
Right.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you, man. And that I do the embellish thing too. Like I'm a performer, jester type.
Yes.
So it's like it's almost like I feel like I have to introduce myself in a way that they're going to be like, all right, that kid's cool. Now it's simple. Hey, my name's Billy. Nice to meet you. We'll probably do it. Right. But no.
Gotta make sure.
Gotta make fucking sure, bro.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. And that's, because what if they think I suck?
Right.
I mean, that's the underlying thing. And it's like, I don't really care, but I still do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about the situation. Like I've stopped caring like a lot. Like if it's outside of my house, my give a fuck level is really not there for it. That's crazy. No, that's a good one. That's the first time I've heard that one on these episodes so far. And that's an amazing one. I think everybody can identify with.
Good. I hope so.
That's a characteristic we all have.
I think so. Yeah.
We all have.
I think so. Yeah.
No, now, not many people admit it, which that's why I'm like, man, I got to have Tony on here because he's going to give me some real shit. Not that anybody hasn't. You've all have. I have learned so much from every episode. This is the last big question. And you can answer this and move on to anything you feel like you want to say, you need to say. almost 34 years. What are you most proud of?
Follow through. And specifically kind of what you were talking about with your daughter. Being able to regularly engage in delayed gratification. Okay, for example, and this is a almost a daily occurrence. I'm sitting in my office. I've got a ton of paperwork to do, and I don't want to do any of it. I want to pick up my phone and just do a quick scroll through Instagram or YouTube just to see if anything's going on real quick before I start doing my notes or finishing up this assessment or whatever it is that I have to do. My instincts are still pick up the phone and scroll on that shit real quick just to see if you're missing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll scroll and that video does look kind of good. I'm gonna watch that real quick. And then that leads me to and then 3 hours has gone by and it's like, fuck, I gotta start getting ready for group and I didn't get any of my paperwork done. It's okay. I don't have any appointments tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And the exact same thing happens tomorrow. And then I end up behind and scrambling at the last minute trying to get shit done. Now, on a regular basis, I'm able to put the phone down, say, I'm going to look on YouTube after I've finished my notes. And not everything. I'm going to get all of my work done. And then, I'm going to do my notes for that last group. And then I'm going to look at what's going on YouTube.
Yeah.
And so I'll do my notes. And by the time I get done with my notes, I forgot that I wanted to look on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I move on to whatever the next thing is. And then the next, when something, I should check Instagram. I haven't been on Instagram today yet. It's like, let's finish what we're in the middle of right now. Because my instinct is always to want to do the fun thing just when I'm getting ready to start something that sucks that I don't want to do. And if I can interrupt that thought and, okay, finish this thing that sucks first, and then do the fun thing. I get all my shit done, and then I'm not scrambling at the last minute at the end of the week trying to get all my shit caught up. I can do whatever the hell I want to when I want to,
Right.
because I've got the shit that I needed to get done. And the funny thing is where that all started years ago, probably it was before I came over here to IOP, so it was before 2009. It was probably in the early 2000s. I got in a really bad financial situation because, I mean, you know, we worked at the treatment center. I'm not making a ton of money. It's like, you know, I've been living paycheck to paycheck pretty much my whole damn life.
Right.
And all it takes is,
Amen,
you know,
brother.
a couple of bad addict alcoholic weeks of spending shit that you don't need to spend and buying dumb shit that you have no reason to be purchasing, and all of a sudden, oh my god, now I'm scrambling. And that would happen on a fairly regular basis, at least every 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months. I would get to a point where, oh my god, okay, I'm gonna be eating ramen noodles for the next week until I get a paycheck. And so I don't remember what it was. It was some news show or some talk show or something. Somebody had mentioned budgeting and, you know, limiting access to your money.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, you know, I'd just gotten a debit card, and those were brand spanking new things. So it was the early 2000s. You couldn't use them like regular credit cards. There were only certain places that accepted debit cards. So I was like, okay, I'm absolutely only going to have a debit card. I can't have anything else. And I set it up so that I could only access it through like the machine at the bank.
Right.
Okay. And so I would have to go and get money out on Friday to have any money, because I didn't have any cash. So
Right.
everything was done through my debit card. And so I'd have to go and get money out for the weekend, or I couldn't spend any money and I'd be stuck. And so I had limited myself. That was the rule. You can only get $50 out for the whole weekend, and that was it. Figure out how to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got used to that, and I got comfortable with that, and I stopped spending a whole lot of money on stupid shit. But I would still get to the end of Sunday and I wouldn't have any money left. I'd spend that whole $50 every single solitary weekend. So then I decided, okay, I'm going to make a new rule. I'm not allowed to buy anything that costs more than $30 until 3 days after I want to buy it.
Okay.
And because I was buying a lot of impulse, I was spending a lot of money on
Oh,
that.
God, I still do it.
Yeah.
I did it this morning on the way here.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. Anything that's in a center aisle at Walmart or Target or anywhere, I'm buying it.
Yeah.
They have 5-gallon plastic buckets for $5.
Where?
Why would you not buy that? Why would you not buy one of every color? I don't need a 5-gallon bucket, but I'm gonna get one of every color because they're only $5. And so I'd get to the end of every weekend, and none of that $50 would be left, and I'd have dumb shit. And so I was like, okay, this is the new rule. Anything over $30 you're not allowed to purchase until 3 days later. And if you remember what it was you wanted, then you can go back and get it.
Good idea.
Because I was trying to curb that impulse buy. And it had the opposite effect, because I'm a good addict and an alcoholic, so I'm compulsive and obsessive about everything. And so after about 6 months of doing that, I had made the decision I wanted a printer for my computer.
Uh-huh.
And there was a printer at Best Buy that was $75. So that was more than $30. So I had to wait 3 days. And of course, at the end of 3 days, not only did I remember where it was, I remembered what store it was in, and I remembered even the make and the model. I'm like, no, that's your addiction tricking you. You don't need, because that printer's $75. You don't need to spend $75 on that printer. You need to give it 3 more days. And I 3 more dayed myself into almost 6 months
Oh, damn.
before I finally said, just stop being an idiot and buy your fucking printer.
Right.
And so I finally broke down and bought the printer. But it had this effect where it just kind of broke me of that instant gratification, that quick fix. And I got the same kind of thrill and excitement from waiting.
Right.
And once that happened in that financial standpoint, then I was able to start pulling that into these other places. And okay, that's not the only thing that sucks. I don't want to wait to get something. I want the pretty red plastic bucket for $5 right now. I could do that in other places. And so then I started applying it at work. It's like, okay, I'm going to wait. And this was back when that started back when I still smoked.
Right.
I'm going to go have a cigarette break and then do my notes. Like, no, do your fucking notes first and then go have a cigarette break.
Yo.
And what happened as a result of doing that, something clicked in my brain and it occurred to me, you don't get paid first. Not only do you not get paid first, you have to work usually 2, sometimes 3 fucking weeks, depending on pay periods, before you ever get your first paycheck at a new job.
Yeah.
You know how to do this. You've done this your whole fucking life. This isn't new. Oh, shit, you're right. I do know how to do this. And I just started applying that to everything. And it got comfortable and it became routine, and now it's kind of normal that I can delay gratification. I can wait and do the thing that sucks and then do the thing that's fun afterwards, and things just started getting better. And not only was I getting the stuff done that I needed to, I was able to follow through on things. I was able to start something and follow it all the way to the end, which I'm a great fucking starter. I'm a phenomenal planner.
Right.
I mean, flawless, beautiful, intricate plans. And if I can get to the point of implementation of starting the plan, I'm okay at starting shit.
Yeah.
Not as good as I am at planning shit, but I'm okay at starting shit. I suck ass at finishing shit.
Yeah.
There's so many things that just, I mean, I stop doing it. It just peters out before I ever get to the end. And so this whole concept of getting used to and getting comfortable with delayed gratification, the end result of that was now I can actually see things through to completion. I can get to the end of a thing that I start. And that's the thing that I'm the most proud of. And it's still not even close to 100%, but it is so much. I mean, it was 100% failure to follow through. Yeah. Even in the first handful of years of recovery.
Oh yeah.
It took a while to get to that point where I was able to even start completing some things. And now I can get to the point where I complete most things. It's still not 100%, and I don't know that I'll ever get there. But it's absolutely the thing that I'm the most proud of.
That is huge.
Absolutely making that transition, because that was absolutely stifling in my, I mean, that was a big piece of all the low self-esteem and all the depression and all that shit. Because I was just constantly beating myself up for not getting stuff done, constantly being behind, never being caught up on anything. Everything was in chaos and distress.
Man, that is huge, Tony. You know how much I just fucking learned? I am so impulsive.
Yeah, well, that's addiction.
Just yesterday, learning how much storage it takes to edit one video. Like, it's close to 1.5 terabytes just to do the editing, and then you get a 5 gigabyte video out of it. Like, I like, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I need this right here, and I spent like another $200 on it if I had just waited.
Right.
And then this morning I finished episode 5, exported it out. I'm like, oh, I can just delete this now. Here's a terabyte back.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm gonna implement that on so much.
Yeah.
Just give yourself a 3-day period. Yo.
And I want to say it was around the 7 or 8 year mark.
Yeah.
That was a thing that kind of fell into my, well, I mean, it didn't fall into my head. Like I said, I heard it on a news program or a talk show or something. Somebody who was a financial wizard or blah, 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 was talking about it. And I was like, oh, that's a really good idea. Because they were talking about how, you know, and it had nothing to do with addiction or recovery.
Right.
They were just talking about how people waste money and, you know, engage in impulse buys, and stores are set up to trap you into buying these things on your way to the checkout line and yada, yada, yada. And it was absolutely, at that time, there was this center aisle thing at Walmart that literally had these 5-gallon plastic tubs. And I had just bought 3 of them because there were 3 different colors.
Right.
And then I was like, And I don't have them anymore. I finally threw them away, but I never used them.
They just
Never.
sat there stacked up.
Yeah, and I have no idea what I thought I was going to do with them.
But it's so useful in recovery too.
Yes,
like that is like such like I think whoever was given that business analytics on there
right.
was in recovery.
Yeah,
I mean,
and the funny thing though is that goes back to one of the things that you were talking about earlier is, finding it where you find it and finding what works.
Yeah.
I've learned an incredible amount of things from meetings and from people in meetings, but I have learned just as much stuff from people and things that have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with recovery. Recovery is not the thing that happens at a meeting.
Yeah.
Recovery things can happen at meetings, but my recovery is anywhere that I'm looking for it, just like my addiction is. I can find my addiction anywhere. I can find recovery anywhere.
Yeah, you just got to keep your eyes open.
Right.
You keep listening, get out of the tunnel vision, stay out of your own way.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's the biggest thing of that for me was just getting out of my own way.
Yeah, me too.
And it took me getting a little stick in my hands going, hey, congratulations, you're going to be a daddy. And immediately right then, like something clicked. I was like, all right, party's over.
Yeah.
It's time to get serious.
Yeah.
And that's been, but it's still like I have those little quirks. And that's why I asked that question. Yeah. There hasn't been one person that has said something that I didn't feel applied to me. This one especially does because I'm so impulsive. Yeah. Like my daughter.
I find most of us are. Like, that's the thing that we struggle with. That's addiction is about instant gratification.
Yeah.
And that's why you can see it in people who haven't necessarily even started using. And I mean, tons of people in recovery that have kids, I've heard over the years have said, oh, I think so-and-so might. And I don't have any kids, but my brother and my sister-in-law have a daughter. And for a brief moment when she was younger, I thought, oh, has she got the trichotilla thing? Does she have it? Oh, I don't know. She might just be being a kid. And thankfully that's what it was. That didn't develop. She doesn't have it. She's not one of us. It was just kind of a passing thing at around 4.
Yeah. No, I think it's just going to be keeping an eye on her.
Yeah.
Being open.
Absolutely.
And transparent with her.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be, and that's kind of like.
And knowing that addiction isn't about using drugs and alcohol.
Exactly.
That's just how it manifests much later on. Mm-hmm. My addiction started way before I ever picked up my first drink or drug. My first drug of choice was reading.
Yeah.
When shit was crazy in my house and with my family and I couldn't deal and I needed to check out, I could go in my room and get lost for 3 hours in a book and not have to deal with shit.
Whoa. That's a good one. That's a pretty healthy addiction, though.
I don't know that there's such a thing.
Well,
because as with addiction, it was all about instant gratification. It was all about obsession and compulsion. I wasn't reading to better myself. I was reading to get the hell out of there.
Yeah, okay.
And I would go through, I know people who are voracious readers have experienced this before, but I would literally grieve finishing a book.
Oh, wow.
Because those were my people.
Yeah.
And they're gone.
Yeah, okay. That's
over. You can read it again. It's not the same.
Yeah.
I already know what's going to happen. I'm not as invested in them. I don't care anymore.
Do you have anything that you wanted to put out there to share? Any like thing that you know that is just something you've learned over your almost 34 years that just kind of like, oh shit.
Just that, what I was just saying, how little addiction actually has to do with drinking and using. It's everything at the beginning and in early recovery. And it's absolutely the thing that kills more of us than will ever get clean and sober.
Yeah.
But it is such a minute piece of what my addiction actually is. And that's because I've been clean for the last 33 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still an addict.
Right.
It's still there, even though I haven't used in 33 years, because it's not about my drinking and using. It's about how my brain processes information, the parts of my brain that are responsible for making decisions, and how those things work together that is slightly off from everybody else who's not an addict or an alcoholic. And because of that, my favorite manifestation of my disease is drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll settle for anything that gives me the opportunity to not have to deal with any of the stuff that's going on out here in the real world. And what I've understood, what I've come to understand over the last 30 years is my addiction is an unhealthy, because it's obsessive and compulsive, it is an unhealthy relationship with inanimate objects. That's what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
My favorite inanimate objects to have a relationship with are drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But I can have a unhealthy relationship with a ton of other inanimate objects. It doesn't matter what it is. And they don't even have to be physical. They can just be ideas and concepts.
Yeah. Dude, that's crazy. I appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. We made my day.
Thank you.